I spent my life obsessed with stories, the kind that change you, that make you believe in something bigger. And when it comes to storytelling at its absolute peak, there's no denying One Piece. It's taken over the world, becoming a global phenomenon in what feels like 5 years, after decades of dominating Japan. But here's the thing, One Piece needs to end. And in this video, I'll explain why. I remember the time I got into One Piece. I was in the middle of writing the manuscript to one of my comics, Purgatory Academy Book 2. The main theme of this book asks the question, does it matter if we have free will? And I wanted Jim, a pudgy little kid, to symbolize the deterministic / predestination side of the story, of the argument, right? And I remember the first draft of the manuscript was nothing more than a stump of the character briefing his death to, who's essentially his guidance counselor, for a couple of sentences. And I think I stopped there because I knew something was wrong. Coincidentally, I was early in the Orange Town arc, the second arc of the story, where we meet Buggy the Clown, the antagonist of that arc. And we get into a flashback sequence of how Buggy was connected to Shanks, a character really important to Luffy, the protagonist, and how Buggy ended up getting powers of his own. I remember when I was watching the anime, I stopped whatever I was doing and studied why it was so effective. It was relevant, it was emotional, and it was memorable. Most importantly, it took its time. It guided the audience into the world of Buggy, and it leads me to another reason why One Piece captured my attention as an early writer: the world building. Every arc of this show does a spectacular job of letting the audience know what's unique about every island the Straw Hats land upon. In the moment, it doesn't matter what every individual island has to offer for the grander narrative, because the audience is focused on the architecture, the culture, the people, and their struggles as a society. And the coolest part about the series is that the main characters aren't even the good guys. They don't go to islands looking to help people. They step in whenever somebody they grow to like is affected by the ills of the society, or they themselves are being threatened by the very nature of just being there. The story does this over and over again, and the most important thing to learn from this is that the world needs to be a living character as well. I believe that I carried that philosophy when making my second series, Chimera Island, a story that focuses on a hidden island striving to find balance. A society is like a body, and the people are the blood that pumps through the veins that make everything work. Like I said before, in the moment, it doesn't matter what the purpose of the island have to the rest of the world, but the greatest reward the story gives is within the foreshadowing, or the fan service the story gives by reminding the audience that the world is bigger than just one island. It reminds me of the writing tip of knowing more than your audience. I, for one, don't really buy into Oda planning 10 years ahead. I think it's ideas he plays with early on and expands upon when he feels like he needs to. And now we get into the more controversial part of the video, where I get a bit more negative. All this cool foreshadowing means nothing unless it's part of a greater point that will drive the narrative home. As of right now, One Piece is a never-ending story that, so I've heard, keep unwinding more and more, and it's blowing the brains of the audience every chapter and every arc. I'm talking every One Piece fans going through the Sisyphean task of gathering their brain cells after every chapter drop, only to piece their frontal lobes back together in order to get the smashed atoms again, only for the next chapter. But listen, I stopped after a couple chapters into Egghead because I don't like waiting every week to read a new chapter. I got stuff to do, games to play, shows to watch, and I just keep forgetting to keep up. I don't want One Piece to end on my account. No, far be it. I want it to end because I'm not convinced that it will matter in the end. What comes to mind are series like Attack on Titan, Promised Neverland, Game of Thrones. Hell, anybody remember the hated ending of Lost? I've never seen it, but I know the meme. I'm at least aware of the meme, right? Sure, the ending isn't everything. In fact, every arc has its own ending. I remember I was satisfied not touching One Piece again after Wano, but I kept coming back because I don't know if it was either sunk cost fallacy or genuine curiosity of where else the story will go. And it leads me to my final point. Every story must have an end. I'm not talking about the end of chapters, or the end of volumes, or the end of arcs. I'm talking about the end of the story of One Piece. Because the real messaging is within endings. I don't care if Luffy gets to the One Piece anymore. Very early on in the story, it feels like it was never about that. I'm okay with it, actually. The ending of a story doesn't mean closure for me. It means a completed thought of the author to the audience to why they believe the themes of the story matter, why the characters embark on this adventure, and explain to the audience why the author feels what makes the characters so enthralling. Whether the author thinks the end goal is worth reaching, or is it something else. This constant stretching of the story, bells and whistles, and callbacks get tiring when all I want is for the author to get to the point of why we're all here in the first place. Having the author's commentary on their works are important because it turns the work in question from mere entertainment to a conversation and understanding how or why the author thinks the way that they do, and how they use these characters to bridge the gap between their ideas and our own. The purpose of art is to help the individual understand the world around them and get one step closer to become the ideal person that they are meant to be. Anything outside of that is just mere entertainment. If One Piece is meant to be entertainment, then it's just doing a good job. Conversation about what the story might mean among the audience is useless because the audience did not make One Piece. The only thing the audience can do is interpret what the author puts down on paper, and the death of the author is real. For anyone who don't know what I mean, death of the author is essentially when the audience takes a work and attribute meaning to it that wasn't its initial intention. I don't believe art should be up for interpretation, because people have so many different perspectives on the same idea to the point that the audience plays a game of tug of war with what they think the author says, or they take the perspectives that doesn't challenge their perception of the world, or they adopt a third-party mouthpiece speaking on behalf of the work in question. Most people don't think for themselves. However, everybody consumes media that does. To be an author is to establish authority on a topic. How far is too far to protect your own tribe? What does it mean to be free? And when is the journey no longer worth the destination?